Okay, are we ready, Janet?
We are ready, Chair.
Okay. I call to order this August 9th. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sorry, I lost it there. Roll call.
Commissioner Balbone.
Present.
Commissioner Berger.
Here.
Commissioner Hallman.
Here.
Commissioner Laughlin.
Here.
Commissioner Oliver.
You're muted.
Commissioner Roman.
Here.
And Commissioner Roche.
Present.
Any adjournment requests?
I have one. So today is a significant day for me and for my family. It would have been my grandmother's 96th birthday. And she actually was the mother to two police officers and the mother of a dispatcher and the grandmother to a dispatcher myself. So I'd just like to spend a minute in her honor. And if any of you think of her today, one of the things I'd encourage you to do is eat ice cream. It's actually the last thing in life that she ate. So remember the sweet, and thank you.
Thank you. Any other adjournment requests? Okay, can move on to the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Commissioner Balbone.
Aye.
Commissioner Berger.
Aye.
Commissioner Hallman.
Aye.
Commissioner Laughlin.
Aye.
Commissioner Oliver.
Aye.
Commissioner Roman.
Aye.
Commissioner Roche.
Aye.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes.
I'll move to approve them.
Actually, I would like to modify them.
Go ahead.
For the record, and I've been in communication with Kristen already, and I've sent my modifications, but for the record, I would like to change on the second page under the unfinished business, 10A, second line item. And I would just like to include that says Commissioner Roche asked whether the current emergency order that allows the acceptance of third-party checks for rent would be a long-term benefit to renters post the pandemic. And Corey Plank advised that currently there are advocacy efforts to continue benefits beyond the pandemic. That the note that was included was just a little vague, and I just want to be able to add that additional explanation for future reference. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, roll call.
Chair, we have Commissioner Balbone. Are you amenable to that amendment from Commissioner?
Absolutely,
Roman?
yes.
Okay, great. And
Sorry.
if we could have a second, please.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Chair. And roll call, Commissioner Balbone.
Aye.
Commissioner Berger.
Aye.
Commissioner Hallman.
Aye.
Commissioner Laughlin.
Aye.
Commissioner Oliver.
Aye.
Commissioner Roman.
Aye.
Commissioner Roche.
Aye.
Okay, moving on to public comments. We have one public comment, or one speaker under public comments tonight. That is Michael Wojciechowicz. Michael, you can start.
Can you hear me? Can
Yes.
you hear me? Okay. Good evening, Commission and public. Michael Wojciechowicz. I start by stating I reside in a city founded upon a few basic noble principles, only then to find itself 3 decades later increasingly orienting itself towards a wealthier demographic and catering to an extreme, not to be outdone, over-the-top service and hospitality economy largely fueled by tourism. And it is this type of hyper-focused economy which is the real public safety threat. This as the consequences apply not only to our own geographically small environment, but the global world at large. As evidence grows for the deleterious impact of global tourism, including a 2018 study indicating non-essential, pleasure-oriented travel is responsible for an approximate 8% of all global greenhouse gas emissions, given the result of aviation, local transportation, and the consumption of goods and services, including food and accommodation. One must wonder why the city doubles down upon its reliance of and subserviency to the tourism sector. Mind you, the 8% figure, which is understood higher for certain areas within an even larger reliance on tourism, such as Southern California, confirms itself as a bigger contributor to pollution than the entire construction sector. Furthermore, tourism-related transport CO2 emissions are predicted to increase to an almost 2 million metric ton by 2030, a 25% rise from 2016. According to the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report, which was just released today and declared an urgent code red for humanity, global heating is affecting every region on Earth, with many of the changes becoming irreversible. While tourism-related transport emissions represent 22% of all transport emissions back in 2016, one can only speculate their increase today. Speaking of emissions, perhaps the former public safety commissioner who was recently interviewed in a high school-like digital blog should reconsider that the real scourge of public safety is not a 35-pound e-scooter which can easily and efficiently transport a single person most anywhere within the city, but the 3,500-pound gas-consuming, carbon-emitting personal vehicle which is hailed by a rideshare app, which often blocks other traffic as it pulls over in restricted zones, creating further pollution and adding additional congestion within the supposed walkable city of WeHo. Heat waves, wildfires, urban fires, floods, droughts, food insecurities, and other real threats to the public safety will only intensify in the near future. But please, by all means, sit patiently and prepare to debate on the marijuana-based business known as cookies. Really, what did your city council think was going to happen when they invited a drug-based business into areas that are directly adjacent to residential neighborhoods?
Michael, your
Thank
time
you.
is up. Thank you.
Thank you. No other public comments, correct, Janet?
None, Chair.
Moving on to commissioner comments and liaison reports. Does anyone have anything? Commissioner Roche?
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to congratulate Commissioner Hallman and his entire team on a really incredible national night out. I was able to attend, and I did not win any raffles. We can circle back about that another time, but it was so much fun. I'm really grateful you were able to do it. I really felt, I don't know, it was really nice to have a sense of community after a year and a half of being in this pandemic, and still really felt really safe, wore my mask. I also was able to attend my first social Justice Task Force meeting. They were just working on their work plan, so they're still working out the kinks on that. So I don't have much to report on that as a liaison or potential liaison. I know we haven't gotten to that within this commission. So that's it for now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Shea. Commissioner Balbone?
I also wanted to thank Commissioner Hallman for a wonderful national night out, as well as the other residents, Elise on the, the northwest side, and then Gateway. I think they did a great job, and I think Jasmine did a nice job as well. It was a really nice night to see everyone out. I also wanted to thank the city for the racial justice conversation training on the 28th. I found it incredibly insightful, and I thought the speaker was very engaging, and the topic was definitely timely. So, thank you for that.
Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Holman?
I also wanted to thank my fellow commissioners who came out in support of our National Night Out, Chair Laughlin, Co-Chair Berger, Chair Roche, Commissioner Valbone, Commissioner Roche. Outside of Co-Chair Berger, I haven't met any of you before because we've been in lockdown. So it was really nice to see masked faces. I also would like to thank Block by Block for participating. Fire, which did a great rendition of YMCA karaoke, and our Sheriff's Department as well. I think the evening was a success. So thank everyone for your support.
Any other commissioner comments or reports? Nope. I just wanted to say thank you to Jasmine. I know she's not on the call, but I know Jasmine worked really hard to put together a national night out for the city this year. And I know we didn't have as many people, as many neighborhoods attending as before, but I think that the event, I managed to get to the Gateway, and I was at Commissioner Hallman's briefly during setup, and everything looked really, really, really amazing. So I'm super impressed with everything that everyone was able to do. And the people that I was able to interact with were really grateful for both events. So I just wanted to say that, and thank you to Jasmine and all the commissioners. Anyone else have any comments? Okay, moving on to unfinished business, election of chair and vice chair. Do we want to take public comments for all these agenda items first, or do the agenda item and then take public comment?
Melissa Crowder, our city clerk, is here this evening, and actually I'll defer to her on this question. I believe we have one speaker.
We should take the public comment first.
Got it. Okay, so let's take our public comment from Michael Wojciechowicz.
Yes, I mistakenly submitted this for comment when there is none. So just go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, got it. And then Michael, I see you're on the list for a few more agenda items. Are you on the list? Are you speaking on all of those as well?
Most of them, yes.
Okay, got it. Okay. So I will turn it over to Melissa.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners. Thank you for having me this evening. I wish my first item wasn't this one, and that I wasn't meeting all of you under these circumstances, but here we are. So we're going to start with the election for the chair. So I'm going to call for nominations. So anyone who would like to nominate someone, please raise your hand. I see Commissioner Balbone. Go ahead.
I'd like to nominate Commissioner Berger.
Okay. Commissioner Roche.
I would like to nominate Commissioner Hallman.
Do we have any other nominations for chair? Can I get a motion to close the nominations?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor from Chair Laughlin to close the nomination. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second by Commissioner Roche. So Kristen, would you like me to do the roll call vote, or would you like to do it? Okay.
You can go ahead, Melissa. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to just go through each of you, and you just tell me which person. So the two individuals are Commissioner Berger and Commissioner Hallman. So I will start with Commissioner Berger. Sorry, you're on mute.
Sorry. Commissioner Berger.
Thank you. Commissioner Roman. Unmute, please.
Sorry, I'm going to just stay out of this vote, if that's okay.
So if you're going to abstain from the vote, you need to share with me what your conflict of interest is with either Commissioner Berger or Commissioner Hallman being the chair.
Got it. Should I do that now?
Yeah.
I'm new to this, so I don't know. I don't know them so well, so I'd prefer to just to abstain from voting.
Okay. Commissioner Oliver?
Commissioner Hall.
Okay. Commissioner Roche?
Actually, Commissioner Berger.
Thank you.
You're
Commissioner
welcome.
Hallman?
Commissioner Berger.
Thank you. Commissioner Balbon?
Commissioner Berger.
Chair Laughlin?
Commissioner Berger.
Wait,
So
could
then-
I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I do think actually I'm not entirely sure why Commissioner Hallman was nominated. I mean, I think he'd be a fantastic chair, so I understand why he would be nominated, but why he was nominated tonight per se. I think it's important to for the commission to support the new chair unanimously. So I'd like to change my vote to Commissioner Berger.
Okay. Okay, so the new chair of the Public Safety Commission is Commissioner Berger. So now we will call for nominations for vice chair. Commissioner Balbon.
I'd like to nominate Commissioner Roche.
Okay. Commissioner Hallman, did I see your name, your hand up?
Yes, I as well second Commissioner Roche.
Oh, perfect. Okay, do we have any other nominations for vice chair? Commissioner Roche.
I would still like to nominate Commissioner Balbo.
Okay. Any others? Okay, do I have a motion to close nominations?
So moved.
Thank you. And is there a second?
Second.
So the Commissioner Roche made a motion to close nominations for vice chair. It was seconded by Commissioner Balbon. Commissioner Berger.
Commissioner Roche.
Thank you. Commissioner Oliver.
Commissioner Roche.
Commissioner Roman.
Abstain for the same reason as I stated before.
Commissioner Roche.
Commissioner Balbo.
Commissioner Hallman.
Commissioner Roche.
Commissioner Balbon.
Commissioner Roche.
Chair Laughlin.
Commissioner Roche.
Okay, so your next vice chair, new vice chair is Commissioner Roche. So you now have a new chair and a vice chair. Thank you all.
Thank you, and congratulations to Commissioner Berger and Commissioner Roche. Does anyone have any comments before we move on to 9B? Okay.
I'll make a quick comment to
Sure.
Commissioner Oliver's point. I completely understand his point. I just thought it would be, I just wanted for the record to understand my support for these two individuals as well.
Got it. Thank you. Moving on to 9B Public Safety Commission purview. It looks like we have one public comment, and that is Michael Wojciechowicz.
Yes, can you hear me?
Sure can.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening again, Commission and public. Michael Wojciechowicz. A few years ago, a push was made to have issues of building and safety re-enter the purview of public safety. This seemed like a no-brainer as public safety staff, along with the Commission at large, always emphasize the benefits, if not need, for CERT training. And after all, a large portion of CERT training deals with the aftermath of certain disasters within the man-made built environment. As no answer was ever given to the public as to why this purview ended, despite Jeff Aubel giving presentation to the Public Safety Commission, it seems obvious that the strategy was to limit, once again, the public's input, thus evading accountability and limiting responsibility. After the recent disaster in Surfside, Florida demonstrated multiple failures at multiple levels, including with inspections carried out by officials at the city level. And with an estimated plus 700 buildings still in need of earthquake retrofit in this very tiny city of West Hollywood, some 2 decades after the devastating Northridge quake, I renew the urgency for the public to have the ability to engage with building and safety issues via the City Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I haven't seen you on one of our meetings for a while, but we do now have code compliance that comes to our meetings fairly regularly. So there is a code compliance presence at Public Safety now. So Public Safety Commission purview.
Thank you, Chair Laughlin. Again, commissioners, good evening. Thank you for having me. During this year's reappointment process for all of our appointed officials, the City Council expressed a desire to look at the purview of the Public Safety Commission. As you all know, your duties are codified in our municipal code, and so it required a change to our ordinance in order to update your purview. Some of what we as staff did, so it was myself and Kristen and Janet and our city attorney, Lauren Langer, was some cleanup language. So as you can see, we removed the reference to the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, not because we are no longer going to receive services from them, but simply to just say public safety or first responders. The reason some of the language included here is very generic, for lack of a better word, is because our municipal code are the laws that govern the city. And so we want to keep it as clean as possible, because sometimes acronyms can change, services can change. Some of the requests from the council were to analyze the level of law enforcement needs, to include language like inclusivity and equity. There was a request to make a reference to the BIPOC community. And as you know, that wasn't included in the code. And the reason it wasn't included is because last year we were using POC, people of color, and then this year, or even maybe it was 2 years ago, we started using BIPOC. So again, we wanted to stay away from specific acronyms and make it inclusive for all. So we came back to the City Council with the updated commission duties. We did this in April, and specifically, they wanted a language that included reimagining how we look at public safety in West Hollywood. And as you know, because it's been a discussion of this commission since June of 2020, that this has been a topic of conversation, and how cities look at public safety and response to incidents in their city. And so that they wanted that addressed. Councilmember D'Amico wanted some references to, he wanted more information provided at commission meetings from the Sheriff's Department, from the Fire Department, from code, rather than just a reporting off. He wanted more of an exchange. He also wanted there to be more meetings that like community meetings. So as we know, Commissioner Hallman hosted the community meeting that the Public Safety Commission sponsored previous to, I believe it was last month's Public Safety Commission meeting, which was fantastic, by the way. Good job, Commissioner Hallman. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Mayor Pro Tem Meister wanted some more information included on emergency management and emergency preparedness, and some discussions and giving your commission a little more power to analyze the level of law enforcement needs. So we took all of those recommendations, and between what Kristen has been working with this commission on over the last year or so, as well as the council feedback and as well as feedback from our city attorney, the changes that we made, we felt reflected not only the council's requests, it also took into consideration the wonderful work this commission has been doing to address those needs already, and incorporated it into the code so that it lives beyond you and I and wherever place in time we may be right now. And so if you want to see the red line changes of it so you can get a really good view, but I just, analyze the level of law enforcement needs and make policy recommendations to the city council, which can include reimagining public safety through alternative community-based systems and mechanisms. We added some language about not only emergency preparedness, but emergency management and working with the city manager and city council to strengthen the community's response to that. Analyze and make policy recommendations to the council on ways to promote in partnership with law enforcement and first responders, the best practices in community-oriented policing for the fair treatment, safety, and well-being for all. That was the big change. So we said for all, because it referenced our Russian community, it referenced our LGBT community, but we always say everyone who comes here to live, work, and play. And so we wanted it to say all. We didn't want to call out specific sectors of the community. We want everyone to be included. As I shared, we changed Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department to law enforcement. We removed fire department to its first responders. There was some discussion about training to give recommendations to the city council on trainings that can be done. So again, like the one that was hosted by this commission last month. And also to make recommendations on service levels for not only law enforcement, but for our first responders. So those are the big changes. I don't think when I looked at it, there hadn't been an update to the commission's purview in a long time. So it was a good time to do it. One of the other things they wanted was for your commission to be televised. So you have been zoomed to YouTube since I believe May, or maybe it was June because one of the meetings got canceled. So those were the big ticket items, for lack of a better word. And that's where the focus is. And as you know, some of the other direction my office has been given is, to ensure we have balance on all of our commissions and boards, not only gender, but also BIPOC and representative of our community overall. So I'm here if you have any specific questions or suggestions. Thank you.
Does anyone have questions for Melissa? Commissioner Berger?
Thank you for coming, Melissa. I have a question about when we make a motion, a recommendation to City Council after we make an analysis. I think our commission is a little bit different than other commissions, that if we do an analysis and evaluation or something like that and make a recommendation, a policy recommendation to City Council, can we, or maybe what's the proper way to format that? In other words, it may not just be a motion, but it may include some analysis and some backing information in order for the City Council to be able to make a more educated decision on that. Can you speak to that?
Sure. So I want to say it was 3 years ago, the City Council decided that the mayor and the mayor pro tem would serve as the subcommittee to all the commissions and advisory boards on motions or recommendations that come from the commissions and advisory boards. So if there was a motion, including analysis and recommendations from the commission, Kristen would forward it to me. I would then forward it to the mayor and mayor pro tem, and they would respond and say, yes, we will put this on a future City Council agenda for consideration, or we have X, Y, and Z questions, or can the commission give us the short-term goals, the intermediate goals, and the long-term goals? So that is the mechanism by which the commission would move that type of item forward.
Okay, so we can make it a little bit more robust than just a motion in our
Yes.
presentation too. Okay, thank you.
Mhm. You're welcome.
Commissioner Balbone?
So I think the wording is very good. One of the areas that I don't think we spend a lot of time on that I think is going to be important is the various age groups within the city. We have young children and they're getting ready to go back to school in the middle of a pandemic. We've got seniors and we've got everything in between. And I think it would be really important for us to pay attention to all of the age bands and their specific safety needs. And I was thinking about it this weekend. That's one thing that I don't think we've reported on crime and or impacts of safety specifically by age band. And I just like to make sure that we're mindful of that going forward as we point out underserved or just populations that we need to serve and be mindful of.
Thank you. Anyone else? Or Melissa, did you have a comment?
Well, in the immediate term, that could be addressed through a liaison position from the Public Safety Commission to the Human Services Commission. Since they kind of oversee, aging in place in the city, they're the ones who liaise with LAUSD for West Hollywood Elementary. So that may be a consideration if you don't currently have a liaison to the Human Services Commission to create one, and then work as the liaison to address those issues. It's also something, that you could talk with Kristen about, and if the commission agrees with moving forward with something like that, she could return with an item to talk about the age groups in the city and the different needs.
Does anyone else have questions? Commissioner Oliver?
I definitely agree with the intention, but wouldn't that be covered under the new language for the well-being for all that we could discuss or give recommendation on those specific needs all underneath that same umbrella?
Yes, you could. For the most part, the Human Services Commission is the commission that would have the most information on those different groups. And that's typically the commission we would look to for that, which is why I suggested the liaison. But that, as I shared, it doesn't prevent the commission from requesting an item to move forward. And again, as long as the entire commission or consensus is built around that, that's fine. It's just those liaison assignments are helpful because that it may be that the Human Services Commission is already doing that work. And so as a public safety commissioner serving in a liaison role, you could attend the Human Services Commission and report back to this commission on what's currently happening. Similar to what Commissioner Roche reported on with the Social Justice Task Force.
Any other questions? Nope, all good. Thank you so much, Melissa. That was very helpful.
Thank you for having me.
We don't have any more questions before Melissa leaves.
One question, for the city clerk. Did we want to get into subcommittees this evening, or when we bring back the liaison assignments in September?
Just briefly mention it, and we'll just say it's under comments from staff, that we are taking a pause or asking that anytime a commission advisory board, now our social justice task force, creates a subcommittee, there's now going to be a form that has to be completed by the liaison to that respective body prior to approval. One, it helps not only the city clerk's office and the city attorney's office understand all the different subcommittees that we currently have. But what they're doing, how often are they meeting, who's involved in the subcommittee. It doesn't happen so much with our commissions, but our advisory boards create a lot of subcommittees, and we just are trying to ensure that we're adhering to the Brown Act, that things are being handled appropriately, and that there's some oversight. So if this commission makes a recommendation to create new subcommittees, Kristen will say, okay, I'm going to have to refer to the city clerk's office and complete my form, and then report back to the commission on if it was approved or if we have additional questions.
Thank you. And I know you all asked to kind of bring some of that back when we do liaisons. So in September, we'll start with our liaisons, and I'll circle back with the city clerk's office if there's desire for subcommittees in the future. Because most of the two that we had were transportation and women's advisory board, and some of those commissioners are no longer on the public safety commission. So the liaison assignments are a good place to start, and we'll do that next month. We're a month behind due to the chair and vice chair election.
Any other questions for Melissa?
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so
Have a
much
nice
for coming. Moving on to 9C, report from the fire department. We have one public comment. Michael Wojciechowicz.
I'm going to forego comment on this item. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you. How about Chief Gorbani?
I'm hoping I can make this work. We've had some technical issues here in the fire department today. Good evening, everyone. I don't have anything special to report. I know there's been a lot of concern about COVID, the D variant. What I can tell you from the fire department standpoint, our runs every month are tracking about normal for where they are this time of year, and they're consistent with the last couple of months. I have no significant fire reports to or fire activity to report. It's been the general kind of activity with a couple of car fires and a couple of kitchen fires. But I am open to take any questions you might have for me.
Commissioner Berger.
Chief Gorbani, you mentioned back, I think it may have been March even, and I asked the question to Chief Smith in our last commission meeting about the receiving centers for the mental health, and that one of the bottlenecks was you're having to take them to Lancaster. And since then, in May, we had I received something from the director of the Department of Mental Health saying that you can now use the urgent cares as receiving centers. Are you familiar with that? Kristen may know this as well. Have you guys been able to take some of the patients to the local urgent care centers?
So I did see some of the documentation that talked about that, but I haven't seen anything in our department policy through LA County EMS at large allowing us to take 911 patients to urgent care. So without having a direct answer, not to be misleading, I'm not exactly sure where we are with that. Right now, our paramedics continue to take all medical patients to the local EDs or ERs. And then I think there was a little confusion, misunderstanding on the previous thing about the Lancaster. I was speaking to my previous experience as a fire captain up there. We don't take any of our patients from the city of West Hollywood up to the city of Lancaster for medical care, be it psychological, behavioral, or medical. Everything has to go to receiving facilities here local.
Who are your closest receiving urgent cares?
We don't have receiving urgent cares. All of our receiving hospitals are Cedars and then Ronald Reagan.
Okay, thank you.
There is some verbiage I saw talking about urgent cares as receiving facilities, but there hasn't been anything that's come through on allowing us as a 911 provider to take patients there yet.
Okay.
Does anyone else have questions for fire? Nope.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
I apologize. I wanted to thank everybody for National Night Out. It was not only great for the community, it was really great for our personnel. We are all proud protectors, and we're all of us have like a servant's heart. And so to be able to be out there in the community again and see the people we serve that we love serving, and then for my guys to have the opportunity to perform YMCA out there with the people they serve, it was fun. I could see smiles underneath masks, and having my guys exposed to what they've been exposed to the last year and a half, it was an awesome thing. I commend you in your efforts for doing that. I find that the little tangible things like that go a long way. So being their chief, which means that I work for them really as I work for you, it was just a great way to find them having that evening and able to share with the community. So I would take my hat off and say hats off, but that would expose what's going on with my hairline, and it's embarrassing. So I'm going to leave my hat on, but seriously, thank you very much from the fire department. Greatly appreciate it.
Does anyone else have questions for fire? No? Okay. Thank you, Chief Barbani. And as always, we appreciate all the work that you do for our community.
Oh, we're happy to do it. Thank you for that.
Sure. Next, we have report from block by block security ambassadors, but it looks like we have one public comment first from Michael Vojkolevich.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Michael Wojtkiewicz, good evening, Commission, and forgive me if I stumble, but I'm finding myself finally in the 21st century where I'm doing like 5 things at once. So with regards to block by block, specifically a couple months ago, there was a situation on the east side involving one of the alleyways that parallels Santa Monica Boulevard. There was a unhoused person who was asleep literally in the middle of the alleyway. This is an alleyway that has streetlights that have been deficient for a number of years. Some of the older streetlights on the major streets, such as Sierra Bonita, that haven't been fixed, ultimately got resolved when the city started to transition towards LED. But the lights that light up the alley are still not addressed with LED. So long story short, this was a very dangerous situation because it was pretty much pitch black. It was early morning. I put in several calls to block by block. It was about 8 a.m. where an additional call by me was put in. Spoke with somebody firsthand. They said that they would have someone come out. Out of pure concern, I stepped out about an hour later only to find the unhoused person still there. So, I live in the area. I know that routinely block by block bike security ambassadors patrol these alleyways. I just don't understand how something as obvious such as this goes unnoticed, and then when it is brought to the attention to block by a person who does the due diligence of putting in a number of calls, you have an unhoused person in a very compromised position because of where they unfortunately fell asleep. So that's my update on block by block. Thank you.
Thank you. Shay, would you like to take that question or?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm do apologize for you having this experience. Normally our guys or our teams, when they respond to calls, they're very good at being able to make contact with the transient or the person that they're calling, that the person is calling about, and being able to get them to relocate. Every now and then that seems to be a bit difficult. So I would have to go back to research to see and look in the notes to see exactly what happened on this day to be able to give you a better thorough explanation on what exactly happened there. But normally that's not our purview. We usually are able to at least get the person to move over into a safer location. So I would have to look a little bit deeper into that to give you a better answer.
Okay, thank you. And then your report?
So good evening, commissioners, city staff. Also, I want to start off by saying, give a thanks to Commissioner Holman for inviting us to the National Night Out. It was a very enjoyable occasion. So I do appreciate that. The teams appreciate it as well. They did get their fill of food. So we thank you for that. So I'll go over the numbers really quickly, just the major numbers that are more important. You guys already have the charts in the packet. Start off with Santa Monica Boulevard, hospitality 1709, business contacts 4,451, homeless contacts 284, calls for service 112, 5 police were contacted 5 times in the month of July, and 387 bike miles ridden. For Sunset, 102 hospitality were logged, 546 business contacts, 17 homeless contacts, 4 calls for service, and 198 bike miles ridden. For the parks, we had 5 park violations. All of them mainly were for unleashed dogs. We had 97 pedestrian assistance, restroom count 423, restroom service 123. For Mid-City, and going forward, I will plan to have a graph, but I was able to extract some of the numbers specifically for that area out of the total. So in Center City or Mid-City, we had 163 business contacts, 22 homeless contacts, 12 calls for service, all were homeless related, 47 hospitalities, and 1 homeless referral. I'm open for any questions.
Commissioner Balbo?
I didn't have a question, sorry.
Commissioner Roche?
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Shay. Nice seeing you at the
Hello.
National, nice meeting you in person at National Night Out. I have a couple things I want to circle back on. The first thing was regarding the phone number on the city's website. I'm not sure if you had an opportunity to chat with Kristen about this, but I know that a few weeks ago, I had the 8602 number saved in my phone, and I'm not quite sure what that number means versus the 8604 number. And I realized that if I'm that confused, others might be confused. And is there a way to update the city website to maybe just add additional information as to why these numbers exist and when to use them?
Absolutely. So the 8602 number would actually be the number it's my phone number actually. So you would be calling me directly at that point. The 8604 is the duty phone number, which is the phone number the hotline phone number. It's the same number that you can text to, send text messages to, leave a voicemail message, and that's our duty phone number.
Okay, is there a way, Kristen, that we could work with the city to update the website to reflect that? To say, because right now it just says hotline. I think it would be helpful for individuals to understand that they can text that, they can call that. Sometimes for me, maybe I'm old school, but when I see hotline, I associate it with just being able to call and thinking somebody's going to pick up, and maybe some information regarding the hours. I don't know if that's a 24-hour hotline. The 86, it is a 24-hour hotline. Okay,
Yes.
great. Okay, great. Maybe it's on the website and I just oversaw that. And that's my apologies.
Change the words hotline to duty phone, just as Shay described it right now. Would that be better?
I like the word hotline.
Hotline.
That's
good. Okay.
I like hotline. If my fellow commissioners agree with that, I think additional language in terms of saying, feel free to call and or text. And I think that would just be helpful. And then I understand why the 8602 was not on the website. Is the 8602 only for commissioners and city staff?
Yes, if you're trying to directly get in contact with me, yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so that clears that up. And is there a voice message if for chance nobody answers the 24-hour hotline? Is there a voicemail for people to leave a message, or should we just call back? Okay. Okay. Great. So, so the other question I had was, the reports. Do you know by any chance some data broken up between West, Central, and East? I really would love to know that in terms of your feedback, because I think it's going to help me and maybe possibly inform my colleagues as to the need. I know that Commissioner Shine mentioned that, and I know we're not on this yet in terms of sheriff, but crime was actually down in Central WeHo, so to speak. So I think it's important for me to kind of really analyze the incidences that are coming up for block by block in these three areas specifically. I see that you're breaking it up between Melrose, Santa Monica, but if there's any way we can do West, Central, and East, that would be great. And I'm not really clear what those boundaries are. Like, I'm asking for this, and I'm not even sure how the city looks at these three regions. Maybe Kristen can add some insight to that.
We can have Lieutenant Mulder go into a little bit more when we get to the sheriff's report, but it was just kind of a clean geographic break, just by using a big street to divide it up. That was done at the request of commissioners at the time. So once we get to the sheriff report, we can talk about, any changes that might be able to be made. We don't want to drive our statistician insane. So, we can have a good discussion on what you all are looking for, and then get it to a point that makes sense for all of you if the current way does not. And then we can have Shay try to mimic those divisions. But we'd want to talk about and make a decision on what it should look like before we have Brian Hepner at the station kind of run the data, because it is very time consuming for him to produce these monthly reports for all of you.
And when you refer to Brian, is he producing the data for block by block?
No.
So I'm referring to block by block.
I know, but we didn't match, so like if we're talking about a geographic area and you're looking at block by block data, you'd also, in my opinion, also want to look at the sheriff data in the same geographic area.
Right. So we want to pull that same map and use it so we compare apples to apples.
That's what I would recommend.
Great.
Again, they could be different, but it will give you a better baseline if you look at the same geographic areas, just looking at similar data.
I agree. And right now, that's why it's a little confusing for me, because I feel like the sheriff's report has different geographic boundaries than block by block. So yeah, it would be great to be able to kind of get them in the same mapping.
Also, Commissioner Roche, is there something specific that you would like that you're looking to hear about, so that I can kind of, focus on that?
I mean, I think the data will tell a story. So if there are, let's say there's, the sheriff's report reflects data that there was less incidences on their end in, let's just say, central area of WeHo. I'm curious what incidences you had to, or not you specifically, but your team block by block had to come across in that same demographic or same geographic boundary, and what that looks like. I'm just saying, I think it will tell a story, and I'm very curious to know what that story is. And the only way I'll know that is by comparing apples to apples. And right now I can't, because I'm looking at a Sunset Boulevard, which is fine, but I don't know how to understand that or analyze that data in comparison to what the sheriff's is providing us. And that's all. You two are working together, these two teams, which is amazing.
Yes.
And I want to continue to figure out how we can make them work better. That's all. Essentially, that's my goal, where is the need? I know Commissioner Hallman has spoken on several meetings about really ramping up our block by block on the east side. And I think having this geographic report will help us support that. Or it will actually tell a story that we actually need more support centrally, even though maybe on the sheriff's end, the numbers are down, which is great. Maybe in a different aspect, there's a different need, maybe that where I live, we may need more block by block. I don't know.
Yeah,
And
I try to relate that. I try to relate that as close as possible to the calls for service that we receive from the areas, but that may not, that may just add to the story, not necessarily tell the story. So
got it, and that's fair. I mean, who knows what will come of it?
But I do understand, so I will get to work on that.
Oh, I appreciate it. And, again, if my colleagues think this is a ridiculous idea, I also respect that. So thank you.
Not at all.
Commissioner Balbone.
I'm about to fangirl the data side of this because I love data. Shay, I love that your reports show us what happened in June and then what happened in July, because it helps me to see if there's a trend. And there's a question in there because I see that for business contacts, it looks like the sunset went down. I'm just curious about what triggered that. I think if we're going to go for consistency between some of the reports, the sheriff is doing year over year, which I think is also a good slice to see, but I like month over month because it lets me know what changed in the most immediate term. So I like that you're doing that. Again, if we're looking at consistency between the two, it might be good to see both cuts of the data. And again, Kristen, I know that this would require some conversation, so I'm not expecting immediate, but I'd love to see month over month and year over year if we could from the sheriff's department. But there's also a question in there just about, okay, the trend went down. Was there something to that?
Yeah, the answer to that question is simply personnel. So I had a couple of guys started to feel ill, so we had to put them out for a little while, and that ultimately dropped the numbers.
Thank you. I hope they're feeling better.
Thank you.
And Bill can tell us more about if both are possible. The year to year is done because it most matches the environment, so to speak. So July looks very similar to July. It doesn't necessarily look like June, if that makes sense. So if you're looking, like September, kids are back to school, people are back from vacation, they're usually a little busy, so it's different. So, but every September we look very similar, if that makes sense, just as an environment. So that's why the sheriff data is compared to September of this year to September of last year. But I'd have to defer to Lieutenant Mulder on if both is possible. And again, we're getting a little off track here with we can talk more about this in our sheriff report. We do have a guest speaker from the sheriff station tonight. So I want to give him time and then we can kind of get into some of this under the sheriff's report if that works for commissioners.
Do we have any other questions for block by block before we move on? Commissioner Berger?
Real quick, Shay, you mentioned you were trying something new last month. You were just started something new where you were splitting the teams up. They were still going together, but they were split up. Can you report to us how that worked?
It's actually working very well. We're still doing it, so I think we'll keep that permanent. We mainly do it on the east end, so that would be our east end 1 and east end 2. I know that's geographical, but we mainly do it on the east end. When we start head towards the nighttime hours, going to the west ends and the clubs and everything down there, and the streets are a little bit wider. I do have them paired up down there. I also have them paired up on Melrose as well. But it has been working well. We're actually able to get a little bit more business contacts because you'll have a particular ambassador in a section for a certain amount of time, and all he's doing is consistently going to these businesses and checking in to make sure they're okay. And then after that, you'll have a rotation for another ambassador to come down to the same area and the same thing. So it's been fairly well. And I think I would like to, well, I know I would like to keep that going. It's been well.
Good. And then lastly, if we have the 24-hour hotline, the only times I see that you guys are on is the Sunset team, and then you have the, and they only go till 4 a.m., right?
Correct.
And then your Santa Monica West End and East End team, they go from 9 p.m. till 5:30 a.m. Are we
Correct.
able to send guys out if we get a call somewhere on the other side of the city?
Yes, right after that. So when that team is leaving, there's a brand new team coming in to start the first shift at 5:30 in the morning. So the only lapse time we would have is the debriefing. And if we did receive a call, we can go ahead and send the team out.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Oliver?
Hi, could you talk just a little bit about the nature? Like I'm looking at the numbers and I see the there's like it's split up both into business, but also hospitality separate from that, and then homeless contacts. What are the business contacts looking like? Like what are the majority of those? Are those homeless related or?
Well, I'm sorry.
No, please.
So most of the business contacts are proactive. So we don't necessarily receive a call for service to perform those business contacts. We're going in to check if there's any comments, concerns, anything like that of that nature, and to let the business know that they are supported and we are there. Calls for service are usually the calls that we're responding to, and 90% of those, if not 98% of those, are homeless related, transient related calls. As far as hospitality assistance, that would be simply saying hello to someone on the street, someone in answer to a question on the street, telling someone the time on the street. So we can actually have a business contact and hospitality contact simultaneously, depending on what the situation is.
That's great. I mean, those numbers are incredible. A lot of amazing proactive work. So thanks for everything you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
If there are no other questions, we'll move on to the sheriff's report. I know we have a speaker, but we have a public comment first from Michael Vojkolevich. Is Michael still on our call?
He's still on our call, Chair. Michael, you can press *6 to unmute if you're having issues with audio.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, you'll have 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Right. Okay, Michael Vojkolevich. It is my understanding that the city of West Hollywood requested the LA Sheriff's Department to hand over certain records to a third party. I believe it was the Center for Equity and Policing. And this occurred over a year ago. My understanding is that no data has been given. As such, I think this commission should take it upon itself and join Inspector General Max Huntsman and call upon the LA County Sheriff's Department to allow access to computer records that include body-worn camera for the purposes of reviewing the Sheriff's Department conduct as well as its own internal oversight. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to our guest speaker, Dimitri Kermani.
And Mr. Kermani, thank you so much for being here tonight. I just want to say before we get started, based on the speaker's comments, the Center for Policing Equity, the MOU was just signed this summer by the city and the county and CPE, and the data exchange is beginning. Lieutenant Mulder and I and the data folks from the county met with CPE just a couple weeks ago. So that while council did ask for us to work with CPE last year, the work did not begin with CPE until the MOU could be signed with CPE, which was just this summer, just for clarification for the group. And with that, if our guest speaker could introduce himself.
Of course, can everybody hear me first of all?
Yes.
Wonderful. Kristen, thank you so much for the introduction. And to all of the commissioners, thank you truly for your service in this last year, for your public service. This has absolutely been the most challenging time that the world has probably ever faced. And, you know, to be behind a screen and continue doing your work and fighting a good fight is something that I personally appreciate from the bottom of my heart. I also want to thank Chief Gorbani, who I had the pleasure of meeting last year for the first time and developing a friendship with. We even shared some words in Farsi with one another, and Sergeant Lapkin and Lieutenant Mulder, who have been my mentors at the LA County Sheriff's Department, a volunteer over there, as Kristen had mentioned, and they have really shown me an incredible side to law enforcement that I hadn't seen before. So thank you to all of you for your public service, for everything that you do for the city of West Hollywood, and for giving me this opportunity to speak to all of you with respect to anti-Semitism and hate crimes that are sadly occurring in modern day times. A little bit of my personal history. I am the direct descendant of 2 Holocaust survivors. My grandparents on my mother's side were both in the Warsaw Ghetto. In 1938, they were both members of the Warsaw National Philharmonic, my grandfather being the choir master and my grandmother being the first violin. When they were captured at that point, my grandfather had lost 90% of his family and my grandmother 85% of her family. And they were taken on a train to a camp, and they were told by the soldiers essentially to go one direction or the other. And it was very fortunate that my grandparents' love for music forced them at that point to bring their violins with them, because they knew if they brought a suitcase, they were going straight to the gas chambers. And so they thought, why not bring something that might give us some hope, and at the very least, if not hope, we can hear ourselves play one last time. And when they departed from the train, the soldiers essentially told them, play for us. And because of their skills, having both been concert violinists, the Nazis essentially told them, we will give you an opportunity to play for us, and in exchange, we'll give you bread and water. And they survived that way until almost the end of the war. They were able to luckily escape from the camp, while many Jews were essentially exterminated after the Nazis found out that the Allies were going to liberate the camp. And so they were able to escape that last mass extermination and not face death. And it's the reason that I'm here today, piece of wood and some strings. And so I can tell you that the Jewish community, we haven't recovered from the pre-Holocaust levels. At the time prior to the Holocaust, we were 17 million Jews worldwide. Today, we number about 14.5 million. So we are still looking to reach our pre-Holocaust levels. I know the names of my family members that died in the Holocaust. This is something that is that close to me. My parents are both, unfortunately, also individuals who had to escape from their respective countries due to anti-Semitism. My mother, at the age of 11, along with her brother who was 14 at the time, they were both essentially beat up. They had their noses broken because their noses didn't look Jewish enough. And they were dragged with their German Shepherd to train tracks in Poland. And the dog was tied down to the train tracks. And my mom and uncle had to watch the dog get run over by a train because it was a Jewish dog. My father, on the other side, came from Iran. Being a Jew in Iran at that time, just prior to the Iranian Revolution, was also challenging. They were considered to be second, if not third-class citizens. And my father would be beaten up every day by his teachers and his peers. Teachers would take a ruler and whip him on the hand until it bled. And if my dad didn't carry 2 lunches to school, then one for himself and one for the kids that would bully him for being a Jew, then he was beaten up for that as well. And so he immigrated to the United States at the age of 16 and became a proud member of and resident of the city of West Hollywood. He's actually one of the people that helped create the Sunset Pacific Plan around 1983. So I have a big connection, deep connection to this city, and it's unfortunate to see a city that I love so much facing some of the things, maybe not what my grandparents obviously or my parents faced, but unfortunately, the propaganda and some of the hate that they face. And I mean, I myself, people that I've considered friends for many, many years, were posting cartoons and photos of essentially things that resembled 1939 Germany. You know, Jews with big noses running out of a bank saying, if I don't steal it, then somebody else will. And these are people that I grew up with, people that I've known for, you know, 20 plus years of my life. And I understand that there is, you know, certain Middle East tension, but being a Jew is very different than simply just being an Israeli. And Middle East politics and Judaism should be separated from one another. And unfortunately, they're not. As Jews, I believe that our strength is not in our numbers, but rather our commitment to humanity through our contributions in science, medicine, music, technology, other things. And the technology that we're using today, part of it was developed by Jews. Some of the medications, the vaccines for COVID-19, you have, you know, with Pfizer, a Greek Jew that's the CEO of the company, who is a descendant of Holocaust survivors himself. Moderna, same thing, the president. So I'm very proud of our people and our commitment to humanity and what we've done as such, but also really saddened to see the hatred that we're seeing, not just towards Jews, but to any minority in this country, be it the African American community, the LGBTQ community. We're seeing a spike in hatred. And unfortunately, we are not standing up for one another enough and defending one another. I mean, I remember during the George Floyd protests, you know, all my friends and I, members of the Jewish community, we were posting our black box, and we've stood up and marched with the LGBTQ community and others as well. And when it came time to post that little blue box to stop anti-Semitism, nobody was there other than my Jewish friends. I think I had maybe one other friend that wasn't Jewish that had posted that little box in support of Jews living in the United States and fighting anti-Semitism. I've had two cousins that were attacked. One was attacked in the city of West Hollywood. He was part of the Umi Sushi event that occurred. And fortunately, he was able to run away uninjured. The person that actually stood up for the Jews that were sitting and just simply having dinner happened to be a Lebanese Christian. And, you know, very ironic for those that understand Middle East politics and what happens in the Middle East, and that there is certain conflict between the Lebanese and Israel. But it was actually a Lebanese Christian that stood up and defended and got beat up for that. And then my other cousin was walking down the Cienega Boulevard a little bit south of the city. He is noticeably Jewish, he's Orthodox, and he was basically chased off by a group of individuals that, you know, I don't want to call them one thing or another, but simply anti-Semites. And he was able to run and get to shelter safely before he was attacked. And so, you know, living in 2021, I never thought that I would experience or face some of the things, hear some of the words that my grandparents heard. I never thought that I would be told by elected officials not to wear my Star of David and to hide my mezuzah, take it off the door. These are things that, you know, I wear proudly, and I always will. I will always defend and honor my people. I will always defend and honor other people for what they believe in, so long as it encourages peace and understanding and respect for other cultures. And I am only hoping that we can continue to stand up as a city and as human beings, simply as human beings, for one another, and fight for what's right and fight for understanding. You know, encourage more programs that allow individuals to understand what the Jews have gone through. The Holocaust wasn't my family's first rodeo with genocide. We were actually originally from Spain. I visited the graves of my great-great-great-great-grandfathers who were pushed out of Spain during the Spanish Inquisition. And to this day, I feel their blood in me. And I brought with me actually the violin that my grandmother played for the soldiers in the camp. So this is literally the reason that I am alive today. And it's incredible to think that a simple piece of wood with some strings could be the reason for my life. My family has gone through a lot even since. Being Jewish, my grandmother's, her protege, my grandmother started teaching violin when she was 14 years old, and her protege was a lady by the name of Ida Hendel, who was told that my grandmother had been killed by the Nazis in 1944, I believe it was. And my grandmother had been informed that Ida, who was 4 years old, she was 10 years my grandmother's junior. My grandmother was informed that she had been killed by the Nazis while trying to escape to the UK. And approximately 15 years ago, my mother was looking through a Hollywood Bowl catalog. We are proud members of the Hollywood Bowl. And she saw that the LA Philharmonic was playing with a special guest by the name of Ida Hendel. And my mom, being the curious person that she is, called the Hollywood Bowl, got the contact information for this lady Ida's manager, and contacted him asking, can you please ask Ida who her first teacher was? My mom gets a call a day later, and says it was a lady by the name of Sarah Greenbaum, who was sadly killed by the Nazis during the Holocaust. And my mom said, that's my grandmother. She's 90 years old and still alive today. And they basically, for 60 years, had believed that one another had passed away. And the Hollywood Bowl put together a special little celebration. Neither Ida nor my grandmother knew what was going on, to reunite them after 60 years. And we got to see Ida's performance. We were all in tears during the performance. And after the show, we went backstage. And Ida was getting her makeup removed. And her manager goes up to her and says, Ida, do you remember a couple of weeks ago, I asked you who your first teacher was? And she said, yes, of course. Why? And he says, turn.
Lost your audio.
We lost your audio right before the big reveal.
Sorry, sir. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. So we had gone backstage while she was getting her makeup removed, and Ida's manager says, do you remember 2 weeks ago I asked you who your first teacher was? And she says, yeah, of course. Why? And he says, turn around. And Ida walks up to my grandmother and just takes her hand, and through her hands was able to recognize her, and dropped to her knees as an 80-year-old woman and started kissing my grandmother's hands. So that was the first time I truly understood personally. It's why I share that story, what my grandparents had gone through in the Holocaust. And when I see things being spread on social media, any form of hate towards anybody, I'm the first to call it out. I am the first to stand up for people's rights. And I want to thank the city of West Hollywood for being leaders in fighting against all forms of hatred, regardless of what that hatred is. And most importantly, I actually want to thank Lieutenant Mulder and Sergeant Lapkin for what they have done. A couple months ago, when my cousin was attacked, LAPD wasn't really taking the situation very seriously. And they went ahead and started interviewing my cousin and some of the other people that were at Sushi Fumi. And when they heard what had happened, they came back to me and said, how can we help the Jewish community? What is it that we at the Sheriff's Department can do? And so I put together a coalition of rabbis and other Jewish leaders within our city, and a service called Magen Am, which basically is a volunteer-based organization that helps guard synagogues and other Jewish day schools, things of that nature. And they exchanged business cards. They took the time to meet with all of these leaders and said, we are here for you. Whatever it is, we are here for you. And there were a couple of rabbis that called me and said, listen, Dimitri, we don't know what to do. Our congregants are afraid to go to the synagogue. They've got their payas, which is the hair, the little curly hair that's on the side over here, or they're wearing their kippas, which are their skull caps, and they don't want to walk here. And they're not allowed to carry phones on the Sabbath. They can't call 911 if they're attacked. What do we do? And I went up to Lieutenant Mulder, and he said, we'll send a car. we'll make sure that somebody's there. We'll have them do rounds, make sure that the congregation feels safe and know that our presence is felt so that they understand they have our support. So I really do want to thank Lieutenant Mulder and Sergeant Lapkin. They held a town hall with me and some of the Jewish leaders, and they have been huge proponents and given us the ability to feel safe again within the city. And I only hope that we can continue to find ways to work together. I am a civilian, even though I wear this badge. I am considered a civilian. I'm not a sworn officer. I joined the Sheriff's Department as a volunteer to bridge the gap between law enforcement and the community. And as I said, I've seen a completely different side of things that I never thought I would see before. The human side, the human element, that these are all individuals that are also going home to families at the end of the day, that also have loved ones. They too want to be able to dance with us and laugh with us and toast with us and break bread with us. And so again, thank you to all of the commissioners who have been given me this opportunity to share my story with what's happened in West Hollywood, with family members of my own and my own personal experiences. Thank you to the Sheriff Department for giving us that ability to feel safe again. To the fire department, who also stands with us, and most importantly for your service, for all of your service in truly challenging times. And know that I'm here to fight with you to help our city continue to progress and do more right.
Thank you for that story, and also for bringing attention to, I know some of our citizens have definitely experienced discrimination, and I think that the more stories that we hear, the better. Does anyone else have any questions or comments for our speaker? Commissioner Oliver?
Well, thank you, Dimitri, for sharing that, and it means a lot. It really does. I'm Jewish as well, and I identified with so much of what you said. I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for my great grandmother surviving the Kishinev pogroms, my great grandfather surviving the Nazi occupation or invasion of Kiev, my other great grandfather surviving the Warsaw, the Nazis occupying Poland. And then my Sephardic side of the family, surviving the Spanish, so many times in history that, family tree could have been severed, and I wouldn't be here today. So you just talking about that really means a lot, publicly and sharing in this way. And also thank you for bringing this, just being Jewish and being, it's such I hear so many things said. A lot of people don't assume I'm Jewish, and they think it's okay. They say things in front of people they don't think are Jewish, and the things that I hear, I don't even react all the time anymore. The things, about always the stereotypes, and if you when you bring it up, if you bring up any issues, the additional stereotype is that, Jew, anti-Semitism, or you can't really have a problem. You're not an oppressed people anymore. You can't, Jews are so successful, and Jews have all the money and power and all this. I'm like, that's a stereotype in and of itself. So anyway, just talking about this in this forum, and you bringing this up in such a eloquent way, I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Commissioner Berger, I believe you had a question or a comment.
Dimitri, thank you for coming. It was surprising that you spoke about that for so much of the time, and it was really cool because we haven't had that perspective really since I've been on the commission. If somebody really speak of that, and that's if I would like to stay in touch and probably make, you can get our emails from Kristen Cook through our liaison, or through our sheriffs too, so that we don't let anything like this slip through the cracks. it's just, it doesn't usually come to our attention in this commission. And so, yeah, that would really be important for us to stay in touch with that. I have some questions about the sheriff volunteers. Can you, I did some research on this before this meeting, and can you speak a little bit about what your job is? I see that you guys take the load off of the deputies, and most of your time is working with the front desk. Which are you guys answering most of the phones, and which phone number do you guys answer, and which kind of training do you guys have as sheriff volunteers?
Certainly. So first of all, thank you for your comments, and it would be an absolute pleasure to stay in touch. I love speaking to my family's history, and it's something obviously you can understand has impacted me deeply. So I would love to stay in touch and be involved in any way possible, help the commission in any way possible. With respect to the volunteer program, we do serve various roles within the department, the primary role being the front desk. The reason being, I am actually the youngest volunteer at the department, right? So there is only so much that the majority of the volunteers can do on their feet. We do have a program called the Volunteers on Patrol program, and I'll get into that a little bit after I discuss our desk work. But essentially, the objective of the volunteer program within the West Hollywood Station is to be the first face that everybody sees when they walk into the department. So we are not answering phones. We are not the ones that are picking up the phone when they call the non-emergency hotline. Everything does go directly to the dispatch, the same as 911. But our goal is more so to interact and engage the people that are walking directly into the station that have either dealt with a trauma of some sort, that are simply transient and they need a place to go, or simply somebody to talk to. People that are in distress. We are trained to basically understand what we're dealing with. And when we do need to either get a deputy involved, when we can handle the situation on our own. But the idea is for people to walk into the station and not feel intimidated, not see somebody with handcuffs and pepper spray and a firearm, but rather to see a smiling face that greets them by, how are you, ma'am? How are you, sir? How can I help you? And just have that empathetic side, which of course our deputies do have, but they're at the same time under a very, very stressful situation, and they need to be out on the street, right? They need to be making sure that our streets are safe, that things are going okay, patrolling neighborhoods, making sure that nobody's committing crimes, things of that nature. Unfortunately, in modern day times, dealing with the transient, I know that with our department, most of the engagements are with the homeless community. And so it really takes the weight off of dispatch and off of the deputies when you can have a civilian volunteer greeting people. And, of course, we go through a rather extensive training program until we actually become official volunteers at the department. We have to go through a 6-month training course. And it's on dealing with people that might have some type of mental disability that could potentially be erratic, learning how to calm them down. I don't want to compare myself to the Met team because that's not what we are. They're dealing with more serious issues. We're dealing with the people that are walking in with metal helmets that think that aliens are after them. And so, it's talking people down, making them feel like human beings, making them feel like there's somebody there to listen to them. We deal with custody exchanges. So for parents who have gone through a divorce that, may have been a little bit of a rough or rocky divorce, that don't want to be in the same place together for whatever reason, they'll come into the station with the child and they'll do the custody exchange in front of us. And, we'll hand the kids a sticker and ask them if they want to be a sheriff's deputy one day, and sort of play with them and make them feel more comfortable being in a law enforcement environment. We at times help prepare deputies and dispatch for a report that they'll need to take. So somebody comes in, they need to file a police report. Instead of going directly to the deputy, we let them get all of that, all the nerves, all the anxiety out of their system by talking to us in a very calm manner. We write down all the information, we relay that to dispatch, who will then call in a deputy, and then we'll sort of go aside with the deputy, explain what's going on. This way, by the time they're actually engaging that member of the public that needs to file a police report, the member of the public understands, hey, they're taking this seriously. They've obviously discussed it, they know what's going on, and it's not like they're having to repeat themselves 100 times over and over. So that's part of our desk work. It does actually also involve preparing people that have to register as sex offenders. I mean, we come across that sometimes. More recently, and unfortunately, we've had to accept a lot of applications for concealed weapons permits. And so it's understanding how to deal with those things. We do occasionally review the permits, and a lot of times we find our ways to sort of get individuals to understand they need more training and things of that nature. But it's really dealing with a lot of the civilian things, bringing down that fear level of being in a law enforcement environment. And saying, fortunately, thank God, we have a great team at our station. Our captain was rated the #1 captain throughout the department in 2020. So hats off to Captain Ramirez.
How many volunteers do you guys have?
We're probably at around 15 volunteers right now, I would say. And then we do have the Volunteer on Patrol program, which is separate training beyond that 6-month period. That's currently on pause because of COVID. But they essentially, they do vacation checks. So if somebody's leaving town and they want somebody to go and make sure that everything is taken care of within their home, we'll go and we'll sort of look around the property, make sure that everything is looking okay. We can check on elderly if it's requested to make sure anybody that's living by themselves is doing okay. And then we'll be eyes and ears for the department. We'll drive up and down the streets. We have marked vehicles that are not red and blue lights, or these orange lights, and it says civilian volunteer on the car. And we can essentially drive through the city. And if we see something that's a little bit questionable, we can directly call it into dispatch. We have to get radio certified, ham radio certified and trained. We have to learn the law enforcement alphabet, various police codes. So we have to go through rather extensive training actually to become part of the Volunteer on Patrol program, which again, is beyond the desk duties. And we'll go as far as helping source things for the department, going to community events and talking to the community, encouraging other people to become volunteers. But it's something that I personally recommend to anybody that wants to understand law enforcement from the law enforcement perspective, and really get a good feel for what it is they have to go through on a daily basis, the ins and outs. We do see the jails at the department. We deal directly with the detective bureau. We deal directly with the sergeants, with lieutenants, with the captain as well. We have our head of the volunteer program, who's a local resident by the name of Richard Best. He has been incredible in running the volunteer program. And it was actually through the volunteers' efforts that we're working now to create a search and rescue team within the city. So hopefully we'll get that put together. And really the purpose of that, we have a lot of elderly in the city, many people that have dementia or other unfortunate disabilities. And the idea is for us to get a group of civilians together that can go out at any time of day or night and help locate these people. And so we're trying to expand the program beyond where it is right now, just seeing how successful it's been leading up to now.
What happens with, how does somebody join if they wanted to join?
So it's a very simple application. We have them at the station. You can also pick it up online. Again, we're not accepting for the Volunteer on Patrol program right now because of COVID restrictions, but they are welcome to basically fill in the application, and they can either drop it off at the station. It goes directly to Richard Best. And we have another individual by the name of David Gillig who's at the station, and he also helps review those applications. they have to go through a background check because they are working in a law enforcement environment, and we do things such as printing copies or obtaining copies of reports for victims. We can't give reports to people that have committed crimes, but we can give reports to victims of a crime. So there is a lot of information that is very private information that we don't want going out to the general public. And for that reason, we do require background checks at the department, fingerprinting, and then they'll start their 6-month training program where they wear essentially a white button-down shirt that's unmarked. It'll just say, trainee basically on it. They'll wear the bottoms of the uniforms and boots. We all have to be properly shaven, or there are certain, of course, for the individuals that like wearing a beard and a mustache, there are approved types of hair that you can, facial hair that you can wear within the department. But the program is a lot of fun. We do things, we clean around the station. We'll clean up trash around the station in the beginning. We'll do a lot of the work that wouldn't be considered to be fun at first. We disinfect the station, get a really good feel for how things work over there. And a big majority of the training is on how do we deal with the public. They're going to come in. A lot of people will be erratic. A lot of people won't know that you're just simply a civilian volunteer. They'll see that badge and think that you're a deputy. So it's really understanding, how do we de-escalate situations? How do we make people feel comfortable being in a law enforcement environment? What can we do to make them feel comfortable? We pass out sleeping bags to the homeless. We pass out clothing to them. We had about, I'd say 200 polo shirts from an old sheriff's program that we had, an old foundation program. I apologize, I don't remember the name of it. And they had these sewn on patches, and that had become dissolved years ago. And so I had an idea of basically getting a stitching remover, and we were sitting down removing the stitches of all these patches so that we can pass them out to the homeless and give them basically a new piece of clothing. So little things that the volunteers add to the department that I think really go a long way. I ended up actually with a very dear childhood friend of mine. We set up food trucks for the department for 20 days straight during COVID, so that all the sheriff's deputies, and we invited the fire department as well, would be fed. We also extended it into Cedars-Sinai, into one of the hospitals in Hollywood, and Ronald Reagan Medical Center, and ended up donating over 100,000 masks, about 20,000 meals, and 3,000 hand sanitizers as far as Honduras. Doctors Without Borders. We donated masks into Tijuana General Hospital. So little things that the volunteers come up with, ambu bags that are pocket size. I raised about $3,500 to get an ambu bag in every single one of the deputies' vehicles over here. So if they needed to perform CPR, they would have immediate access to an ambu bag, because we were instructed not to give CPR due to COVID, right? So, maybe we can do chest compressions, but they needed oxygen as well. So we found these incredible pocket-sized ambu bags, raised a ton of money, and because we had leftover ambu bags, we ended up donating them to other stations, search and rescue teams. And I have been told that they've been used to provide CPR and already saved lives.
Thank you. You have done so much. It's awesome. There's probably some other commissioners that have questions too, but you've given us a lot of information. Thank you, and thank you for your service.
Truly my pleasure. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions for Commissioner Balbon?
I don't have a question, but I want to echo Commissioner Berger. Thank you. Your story was amazing, and I'm thankful that the city has rallied. If there's more we can consider doing, I'm hopeful that we'll find out. And thank you for the also explanation of your volunteerism. You shine and you make sure that we feel it. And it was heartening. So thank you. And the only other thing that I'd like to say is to you and to Commissioner Oliver, Shana Tova, a little early. Thank you, and I wish you both a very sweet New Year.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other comments? No. Thank you again so much, Dimitri, for coming. We really enjoyed your talk. And on a personal note, I've actually met both of your parents, and they are lovely people.
Thank you so much.
And they're both very nice people. And there's some of my first experiences in West Hollywood was with your dad. With your dad and your mom were both involved because I worked at Mel's for a really long time. So I've met your dad plenty of times.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I will let them know that you send your regards.
I'm not sure if our chair is frozen. Amanda, are you there?
I'm here, yeah.
Oh, okay. There you go. Dimitri, thank you again so much for coming. It's always a pleasure to see you and hear from you. Chair, would you like Lieutenant Mulder to start the normal part of the sheriff's report? And Dimitri, we won't be offended if you fade away now into the Zoom.
But I'm gonna hang tight. I've really enjoyed everything so far. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
Yes, it says my internet connection is unstable, but yes, I did call for Lieutenant Mulder.
So good evening, everybody. Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners, and congratulations to our new Chair, Berger, and our new Vice Chair, Roche. And a huge thank you to Dimitri Carmani for sharing his personal story tonight. I have had the honor of hearing that story before and the honor of holding that violin, which has so much meaning and for his family and really for the world in terms of his story. And we appreciate him, calling on all of us to care for others, and really that's the only thing that's going to change the paradigm in our society. And also the volunteer program, if anybody's interested, it's a wonderful program. The entire Sheriff's Department does have the program. Our station has had a very rigorous volunteer program, and they are our heroes because of them we can really we can do better serving our community with their help. Otherwise, if they weren't there, there'd be a lot of other things we'd have to address and would then reduce our ability to serve our community as well. So thank you to our volunteer family as well. So to get into the statistics for this past July, July of 2021, Part 1 crime was up 48% with 172 incidents compared to July of 2020 with 116. And I know that sounds extremely high, but just for context, again, as you know, last year, March and April of last year of 2020 recorded the lowest number of Part 1 crimes in the city's history. We usually average about 180 to like 220 Part 1 crimes a month prior to 2020. And kind of for additional context, at the beginning of 2020, prior to the pandemic, I've said it before, we were almost 30% lower for Part 1 crimes moving into that last year compared to the previous year of 2019. So we expected, obviously, crime to go up, Part 1 crimes to go up, especially as we reopen businesses and so forth, that this would happen. But nonetheless, if we look at our year-to-date Part 1 crimes compared to last year-to-date, we are up less than 1%. So for the entire year, we're still tracking okay. But there's things that we certainly are going to have to address some of our efforts towards. The west side of town was up 98%. City center was up 8%. And the east side was up 6%. And I think from last month, last month's meeting about the June statistics, we showed a drop in city center by about 50%. So that was positive. And just to kind of delineate what west center and east is, west is basically Doheny to La Cienega. Center is basically La Cienega to Fairfax, and the east side of town is Fairfax to La Brea. And we will, I will have our crime analysts get in touch always with block by block, just to give them those exact areas so that as the commissioner requested, they can kind of provide a report from those areas that kind of mimic the areas that we look at in terms of west, center, and east. Part 1 crime breakdown was for 60% of the Part 1 crimes last month occurred on the west side, 21% city center, and the east had 19%. The west part of town is obviously the most effective and affected by Part 1, the rise in Part 1 crimes. You know, because of the openings of bars, clubs, restaurants, Part 1 crimes have increased, and we also saw quite an increase, obviously, with the bars, clubs, restaurants open in cell phone thefts that were occurring from several of our establishments. And we had actually set up an operation with our cops team and our entertainment policing team to address that last week, but that particular operation had to be put on hold because of the protests that were occurring last week. Our felony arrests were up 50% and our misdemeanors were up more than 100%. So that is good in terms of addressing the uptick in Part 1 crimes, to try, at least on the felony side, to address some of those changes. And July was unusually high in our aggravated assaults. We had 17 incidents with 5 arrests, and 6 of the incidents did involve transients as suspects. Other burglaries, that category was also up. Mail theft was also continues to be up. Grand theft auto, we had 21 stolen vehicles. 11 of those were recovered. And vehicle burglaries we had 21, but we're still not seeing necessarily a concerted effort by any kind of organized group to commit those vehicle burglaries at this point. Like I said, there were 14 mailroom burglaries this month, and we put out quite a few flyers about photos of suspects. A lot of these areas do have video, so we've been circulating with other law enforcement agencies those videos to try to link them to other crimes, and when they're arrested, they can be charged with all those crimes. And it appears like the vast majority of those thefts, the mail thefts, have occurred between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. And I know talking to other groups the last several weeks about mail thefts and what recommendations we make is we do recommend you get your mail daily, go pick it up from the mail slot, the mailbox, wherever it's held, and also packages. You know, if you know you're going to be receiving a package, make sure you get it picked up so it doesn't sit there overnight. We are also continuing special operations with our cops team and our entertainment policing team, and we have done several to address the mail theft issue. And we always recommend to people that are having this issue, whether in residential buildings, that they have cameras, lighting, gating, fencing that's locked, and that people don't leave the gates ajar and that sort of thing. As I mentioned before, we have a partnership with Cedars-Sinai Hospital, which in the future our cops team and our entertainment policing team will be conducting outreach with people from Cedars-Sinai to our unhoused community as well as our senior community. So that will be coming up in the very near future. We also continue to monitor the situation created by the marijuana dispensary Cookies, which is located in the city of Los Angeles. And one speaker earlier I know mentioned that West Hollywood would allow them to come, but it's not. Cookies, again, is not in the city of West Hollywood. It's in the city of Los Angeles. And so the city of West Hollywood had nothing to do with the permitting of that business. Recently, one of the complaints we heard is from a resident that the security company that Cookies has contracted, one of the vehicles had been speeding up the street and would park at the barrier on the West Hollywood side and then get out and leave the car there and go in. But we mentioned that to Cookies, and then they said they would address that issue. We continue to conduct our care outreach operations, which is the operations our cops team and our entertainment policing team conduct to go out, do outreach for our unhoused community. Part of our, as I said before, in the regarding the aggravated assaults, about a third of those, actually about 40% of those were committed by transient individuals. And that's why the outreach is really important, to see if we can get these people some help before that small group that does engage in this activity, if we can get them some help before that activity occurs, so the crime won't occur and they can get the help they need. We also have been putting stuff on our social media regarding street robberies, sexual assault prevention and nightclub safety, bicycle safety, fire safety, mail theft issues, identity theft issues, and some other things. So please refer our social media for tips on those things. And if there's anything else that a community or our commission would like to see on there, let us know, and we'd be happy to put up information on that. And also mentioned earlier, our study with the Center for Policing Equity. As Kristen did mention, the MOU has been signed, and that we did a week or two ago have a meeting between our data systems folks and the tech folks from the Center for Policing Equity, so they could all touch base and talk their tech stuff, which half of it, or actually more than half of it, I have to say I don't understand, but they spoke to each other about it, and so they know what kind of information and how to send it over. So we're waiting for the Center for Policing Equity to make their first request for information, which will probably be a 30-day request, and they use that to see what is in there to make sure all the information they need is contained in there. Then they'll do the big ask for the whole the ask for about 5 years of information is what they require to conduct their study. So that will be coming up very, very shortly. Back on July 22nd, one of our deputies, Deputy Herrera, was conducting patrol in the area of Melrose Avenue and Robertson when he saw a white van going in the opposite direction, and he kind of noticed the van, and then he was immediately flagged down by a witness who told him that a male that driving the van had carried a female who appeared unconscious and put her in the van and then took off. So the deputy made a U-turn as to follow the van, and as he did that, the van stopped, the driver exited. He detained the driver, checked on the female who was passed out in the van, and didn't know who the driver was. And that driver was then arrested for a kidnapping charge, and that current case is being investigated by our detectives. As you may know, too, last couple of weeks we've had protesters who are anti-mask, anti-vaccine protesters. There were 3 protests outside an outpatient building for Cedars-Sinai, and about 8 other protests at local bar restaurants in West Hollywood. 4 of the events we had confirmed violent incidents occur, and then in 3 of those we declared an unlawful assembly and made a dispersal order and shut down the event. We always support everybody's right, constitutional right to protest, but those protests obviously have to be, cannot contain violence when people are getting hurt. Once that happens, then we shut down those types of events. And last week too, we went to 4 of the National Night Out events. One of them was a virtual event, which the Russian Advisory Board event, and then 3 of them, of course, the events that were occurring in the city. Myself, Captain Ramirez, and members of our cops and entertainment policing team, which are our teams that do all the outreach to our communities and really make for a wonderful community and sheriff relationship and contact. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Lieutenant Mulder? No one? Commissioner Hallman?
Thank you, Chair. Lieutenant Mulder, good evening. You and I did have a very lengthy conversation about the protest that happened at Harlow. how are these types of situations handled from start to finish? As mentioned to you, I was getting texts and calls from friends and residents at Avalon because what was going on, as well as I spoke with a manager at Trader Joe's who had concerns. They did find that they had to close early because of the protests. So could you just give us a more in-depth explanation of how the sheriff's department handled the situation overall?
Yes, Commissioner Holman. You know, we had several. We had like 3 protests at Cedars. One of them, the first 2, we didn't even we were unaware of until the 3rd one, when there was a lot more social media information about it. We went to that one. There was violence, and then we called for an unlawful assembly, did a dispersal order. And then, so in general, with these, we're a lot of times information driven. We have assets in the department that look at certain information that we get in from different sources, and we make a determination based on that, the threat level of the event. And so for these particular events, and I'm not going to get into a tactical conversation of what we do. I can't do that, but I can tell you that, you know, we have always the events at the restaurant over on the east side, and then this weekend over on the west side. We've been there the whole time. We might not be having a group of deputies lined up right in front, but we are monitoring every single one of those. And quite a few of those, we had quite a few additional assets from the department and special teams set up and ready to go in the event that it turned violent. And in some cases, it did turn violent. And I'm sure people saw quite a large number of deputy sheriffs coming out to end the event, to preserve public safety for everybody. Is that kind of clears up a little bit about kind of how we've been dealing with them?
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Any other questions for Sheriff? Commissioner Balbo?
So I had 2 questions. One was about, I know that on our club pickpocket and thefts report, it's centered mostly around the West Side bars and clubs. Is there a need to include any of the others in town, or is that where most of your calls and or, you know, pickpocketing and risks come from?
Yeah, Commissioner Balbo, that's a good question. Yeah, that's we go where the issues are, and so most of them are occurring on of those type of pickpocketing issues are occurring on the West Side bars. And you know, if it's occurring in other places around the city, we always encourage people to report, to call us, let us know. We're happy to work with businesses and trying to mitigate these types of problems. So, you know, if we don't know, we don't know. So it's important that people, if there are other issues happening around the city, that they let us know, and that people that are a victim of it, that they come into the sheriff's station or call out a deputy to make a report of the incident.
Okay, thank you. And my second question, I know that there's been a lot of focus on social media, on various apps regarding incidents at the Abbey. And I know that there has been a response from the Sheriff's Department. I think it would make sense to outline a little bit about that response, respecting any confidentiality, but I do think it's important because there were some serious allegations out there. Can you talk a little bit about that? Again, respecting confidentiality.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, as you indicated, there was an individual who on social media reported they believed that they had been drugged at one of the clubs. So, and we take those kinds of concerns very seriously. And we always encourage those people to make a report to the sheriff's station. That's the only way we're going to A, know about it, and B, we can then investigate it to find out what happened and to see that it doesn't happen again. So that individual then did come in and file a report. Then we also had another report that somebody felt that they also had been maybe something had been put in their drink at one of the bars in town, and possibly a sexual assault occurred. So they did report it. We are investigating that, or actually our Special Victims Bureau is investigating that issue as well. But again, like I said, I really, encourage people when these kinds of things happen, or you feel you're a victim of these kinds of situations, to come to the station or call us and have us come out if you live in West Hollywood, to take a criminal report and for us to do an investigation. It's fine to put it on social media too, but that doesn't translate then to us. It's really important that we hear from you and can help you out.
Thank you. And the only thing that I do have a quick question about, Lieutenant Mulder, is not that this is the job of law enforcement, but I know that there's some monitoring of various apps that goes on. What is the process for you all, like when you're monitoring social media? Do you just reach out to people? I know that we can reach out to you. I've done it a couple of times to say, hey, there's someone that I either gave your contact information to, or you should reach out to, but how are you all monitoring, and what's the process for that?
So the department does monitor that, and they have like kind of specific things they look at. And if something comes up, they'll forward it on to us. I know Dimitri mentioned Richard Best before. He handles like our social media, and he's excellent at monitoring things and passing them on. And then we try to make contact with that individual. And then also the city of West Hollywood has a excellent communications program, and they monitor things as well. And if they see something on social media, on a social media platform that pertains to us, or pertains to a crime that may have occurred, they'll forward it on to us, and then we'll try to contact that individual. And then, like you said, if you see something, you've seen stuff and forwarded on to us, so, but again, if something happens, if a person is a victim of some sort of crime or something that doesn't seem right, please call us. You can put it on social media too, but please call us and let us know. I don't like to see the delay, and it going out on social media, then somebody seeing it, and then finally somebody pushing it to us, and then us making contact. Time sometimes is of the essence, and just call us and run it by us first if you're not sure, but never feel concerned to call us if you do have a concern.
Thank you.
Commissioner Roche?
Thank you, Commissioner Balbone, for bringing that up, actually, because I know I've mentioned it in previous meetings. So that actually leads me to another question, Lieutenant Mulder. And I agree with you that folks need to come forward and file a report so it's on record. Obviously, if victims, if folks are in the situation where they have possibly been drugged and they are not in a conscious state, there's a good chance they're not going to come right to your station. They're going to need some time to kind of figure out what exactly happened. Is there a time frame that you recommend, or can folks, because I can only imagine that there's some level of trauma that comes with that experience, and then having to reconcile that actually happened. So I can't necessarily say if that happened to me that I would, walk right in to the station that night or the next day. What would you recommend, like as soon as possible, as soon as they decide that is what happened, for them to come forward and file a report with you? And yeah, is there like a process that feels like welcoming and inviting and safe for that to happen?
So yeah, you have an excellent question, Commissioner Roche, and these kinds of situations are very difficult and very traumatic, as you said. And request is that people come in as soon as they can, as soon as possible. And we can offer them help and services and to go into situations where they can have somebody talk to them, counselors. And especially if it's sexual assault has occurred, in terms of evidentiary collection, the sooner the better. And we have a wonderful association with the Rape Treatment Center, which are the people that work there are fantastic and caring and compassionate and kind, and can help someone through this process just beyond the evidentiary or medical collection or medical exam. They can connect them to resources and help and all of that. They are a full service and fantastic group. So yeah, we do have a process that's set up to handle these situations, knowing full well the trauma and the issues that surround these kinds of situations, to make it make the situation as best possible for the victim, for the survivor.
And in this, let's say that, you know, there wasn't a sexual assault that occurred and there was a drug that was placed in someone's drink. What evidence could be taken at that time to prove that? Is there blood that can be drawn? What's that process look like? Because it sounds like that is what is constantly being raised. That's the issue. And I'm not sure if I'm not clear as to what the step would be and what that would look like in order to create evidence. So they have something to lean on. What would that look like?
Yeah, and it depends. Another good question, and it depends on what substance was used. So if you're talking about somebody who's going to a club, they feel like they may have somebody may have given them something because of the feeling they're having. It's not consistent with the amount of alcohol they drank, and maybe they didn't drink any alcohol at all. And then getting a blood test, it depends on what the substance was and the time frame and whether it would show or not. So there's not like one hard, fast answer. And that's why we say, you know, as soon as you can report, it's best you report, and then we'll do everything we can in terms of evidentiary collection and all that to address the investigation.
But are there processes in place at the station that could take steps into running tests if somebody was drugged? I don't know.
There are.
Okay, there is.
Yeah,
okay, great. Okay, so
what I mean. Oh, go ahead.
No. This is a really important piece here, because I'm going to lean into this moment in the future when this arises again, because it will. And if I need to bring somebody to the station, because I'm trusting that you're saying we have a process in place that we can get to the bottom of what happened, maybe not fully, but at least a first step, that is really important information for us to know that we have at our fingertips. And I didn't know that, honestly. So this is a big game changer for those who are experiencing this or have experienced it or may experience this, I should say. So that's all. I will personally bring someone into the station if that's the case.
So yeah, I mean, somebody, if they are thinking that they were, because there's a whole process set up to do a sexual assault examination, and there's a lot of things you can collect. Now, to your question, or your part of your question, saying, well, the person doesn't believe they were sexually assaulted, but they believe they may have been drugged. So I would come in and report it to us, and then the person can go to an emergency room, urgent care, or whatever, and have blood drawn, and maybe even urine taken, and then we can take it as evidence and have it analyzed.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. Thank you, Lieutenant Mulder.
Absolutely.
Does anyone else have questions for Sheriff? Okay, thank you so much, Lieutenant Mulder. How about an update on impacts from cookies? Do we have anything from cookies?
And I think Lieutenant Mulder mentioned a little bit, we've had some parking complaints. Staff and sheriff have been in contact with cookies security Bill, anything else that we missed during your report?
Oh yeah, no, Kristen, that's exactly it. Yeah, I did mention in the report that there was a issue about security driving up the street, I guess at a high rate of speed, and parking in the street on the south side, West Hollywood side of the barrier, and then going into Cookies. And we did let Cookies know about that, and they said they would address that.
Got it. Thank you. Do we have any commissioner questions about Cookies? No? Okay. Thank you again, Lieutenant Mulder. Moving on to 9G, reimagining policing. We have a public speaker, Michael Wojciechowicz.
Chair, I don't see him in the meeting anymore, so he might have.
Got it. Okay. So let's move on, and then if he comes back, we can get his comment.
Okay.
Do we have any updates here?
Yeah, so Lieutenant Mulder went over how the data transfer is beginning with county staff and CPE. And Bill, I didn't understand 2/3 of what they said. So you're ahead of me by understanding half of it. The data folks talk to the data folks and they seem to understand each other perfectly. So that was a really good meeting. Sean Eldridge, our project manager from CPE, is going to attend our September meeting. So we'll be able to hear from him and you guys will have a chance to ask him some questions. He's going to provide us, sends over certain reports that are posted on their website, but he's going to prepare a packet for all of you for September. So we're excited to have Sean come and we'll dig a little deeper into that next month. And that is it for 9G. Thank you.
Anybody else have any comments on 9G, reimagining policing? Okay, moving on. Any items from subcommittees?
And that again, I'm going to pull off the agenda until we follow the new process that the city clerk is doing, especially since our two subcommittees, the commissioners, are no longer with the commission, but we will return in September for you all to select your liaisons to the various boards and commissions.
Got it. Okay. Items from staff?
Again, just taking a look at the schedule coming up. If anybody has any concerns through the end of the year, we'll start to add the 2022 meetings to this list soon, but that is it, Chair Laughlin. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for staff on this item or anything else? Commissioner Berger?
Yes. I would like to ask when we think we're going to set up, agendize our work plan. And that's probably going to want to take almost, at least one whole meeting on that work plan. When would we schedule that and how would that work?
Vice Chair Berger, we normally do that the meeting after the liaison. So I have like a draft slated for October, but if you have a different month in mind, you could let me know.
I think it's, I've had some people I have already started putting some things together. How might we input that, ideas and things? We could even start working on that on our own now. Some of us send it to you, our liaison, and so maybe some of the other commissioners have some ideas about what they think about.
Fine. For commissioners to send me comments and then I can put together kind of a draft for you all to review in October. That doesn't stop you from doing work between now and October, by the way. That's just more of a formal process.
Any other questions for staff? Commissioner Roche?
I'm so sorry. Now I'm confused. So are we bypassing liaison assignments this meeting?
Liaison assignments are on your agenda for the September meeting.
For September. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I see that it's not on here. My apologies.
So
But
again,
I wasn't sure.
We're a month behind. And again,
Right,
I
okay.
apologize. I did not know when somebody abstains that shrinks the number we're dealing with to find a majority for votes. And so that's why we had to do the chair and the vice chair voting again. So, if there's 7 commissioners, normally 4 commissioners would pass something. Since we had 2 abstentions, that shrunk the number 7 to the number 5. So we only needed 3 to pass. I was not aware of that. In all these years, that's actually never happened. So I apologize for that. So we're a month behind because we had to redo the chair and vice chair election.
My apologies. When I read subcommittees, I wasn't sure if that was being identified as liaison. So
No, that
sounds great.
Subcommittees is a standing item on your agenda. And to be honest, when our city clerk was talking tonight, I realized that's still kind of hanging on our agenda. So we should remove that until we have an official subcommittee to discuss a report from.
Sounds great. Thank you.
I think Commissioner Hallman.
Sorry, Chair, I was going to say that the mayor has not made her appointment yet to the commission either. And so that will also affect liaison assignments.
I believe she's going to make her appointment later this month.
And that's why we're hoping September we'll have full commission to be able to make those liaison decisions.
Got it. Okay, Commissioner Hallman.
Thank you, Chair. As I look at our upcoming calendar schedule for the rest of the year, obviously we all know why we're still meeting virtually, but do we have any updates? Because I've been asked several times when we think we might start in-person meetings again.
Commissioner Hallman, we don't know. To be honest, as you all know, we were hoping to have one of the July council meetings as in person, but the surge with the Delta variant put an end to that. We're seeing case numbers and hospitalizations similar to what we experienced in February of this year. So we're hoping the peak is starting to level off a little bit, but need to get cases back under control before we can put large groups of people inside. And the council will be the first to go back in person, and then the commissions and boards will follow.
Thank you.
Of course. We're disappointed as well, to be honest. It's much easier to kind of see some of you face to face. We will be offering a hybrid model. And again, we'll be testing that at the council level that we can mimic, because we have had a lot of comments of people saying that it's easier to call in from home, and they wouldn't have necessarily driven to Plummer Park to come see us. So there will be some sort of format where we can do both in person and either Zoom or call in or something. That still kind of remains to be worked out.
Any other questions for staff? No more public comments, correct?
That's correct, Chair. No more public comments.
Any items from the commissioner comments? Commissioner Balbo?
So I don't think we gave enough time in the agenda last time to thank Chair Laughlin, you for your leadership. You have helped to serve as a transformative leader on this commission, and you have helped bring the business community in and honed our focus in a very different way than I think when I first joined the commission. And I'd like to extend my gratitude, my respect for everything that you accomplished. We may not always have seen eye to eye, but your diligence, thoughtfulness, and follow through on behalf of this community is so incredibly meaningful. I wanted to extend my gratitude and thank you for it. I'm a better commissioner because of it. So I wanted to thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Balbo, and that means a lot, and I really appreciate those words. Does anyone else have commissioner comments? Commissioner Roche?
Thank you, Commissioner Balbo. I definitely want to echo that. I completely agree. Even though I've served with you for a short amount of time, I've been able to witness your leadership before I became a commissioner, and I'm grateful for your time with us. And hopefully you continue. We shall see. Also, I would just like to kind of circle back about our future agenda, if possible, for September. I understand that, Kristen, you are removing the subcommittees and that you're replacing that with liaison assignments. I would also like to ask my colleagues if they would be open to also adding an item to the agenda, possibly an ongoing item for work plan. I think, or maybe we talk about having a special meeting. I'm not sure how work plans have been handled under your leadership, Commissioner Laughlin, but I know as a co-chair of LGAB, we dedicated an entire meeting to developing a work plan and decided not to have speakers, decided not to forego all the extras, not extras, well, extras in a sense, but it was important for us to kind of take the 2 hours to really dive into developing work plans. So I just wanted to plant that seed with my colleagues, see what their thoughts were, see if that was something that interested them in the future, maybe for our October meeting, or we can have a special meeting to kind of dive into that.
And that staff's plan is to devote the October meeting to the work plan because we anticipate a new commissioner from the mayor, to be seated, sworn in September, liaison assignments to be selected, and then October to have that work plan discussion. So we can definitely forego regular sheriff and fire reports if you would like, and just do work plan. We can talk about that again in September and you can kind of tell us for sure. We can also leave those items on the October agenda and do them last if there's time, or take them off completely. So we'll work with incoming chair Berger every month to develop the agenda. But that's kind of staff's plan at this point, and we're happy to take direction from all of you if you have a different idea.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if a special meeting has occurred in the past in order to continue to receive reports and review reports. I know it all just takes time.
Special meeting, but it's usually the guest speaker, so to speak, of that meeting is the word.
Got it.
And so no outside speakers in the past. And also just a reminder that the work plan has to fall within the purview that the city clerk reviewed with you all tonight. So make sure you have that handy when you're giving us your comments.
Fantastic, thank you.
Commissioner Holman, I think you had a comment.
Yes, thank you, Chair Laughlin. I'm excited about our new chair, Chair Berger. Our co-chair, Roche. I think our last meeting was a learning experience for us all. I know it's kind of pushed our agenda a month, but with that said, I personally feel that we will be a stronger commission moving forward as we work together. I am thrilled to be a public safety commissioner with each and every one of you. I'm still a newbie here. I'm learning. I'm trying to keep up. I have a great respect for each and every one of you. Commissioner Roche, I've said I learned so much from you and I'm working to keep up with you. I applaud you and all that I'm learning from you and everyone else. So I'm excited for the work that I think we can accomplish on behalf of the city, which we all truly do love over the next year as we move forward.
Thank you. Any other comments? Commissioner Berger?
Thank you, Todd and everybody. And I agree. I think that this commission is going to be stronger. And a lot of times the real leaders aren't the ones in the roles. And I consider you a real leader, Commissioner Holman, and some of you others too as well, definitely. So I really hope that we can combine and really do something special with our different contractors and our services and our block by block. And I really hope that this 2021 Public Safety Commission group, we do something that's game changing and with our whole group and the synergy. And I really think that we can do it. I think that we have the talent and the people and all of the pieces that we can really do something. And I just hope that this will leave a legacy for us, that we can do something really, really game-changing for West Hollywood for the future.
Great, thank you, Tori. Any other comments? Nope. So I would just like to say thank you for giving me this opportunity to serve for, I think it's been 4 years now. It was a really hard decision to decide to step aside to go back to school. But in the end, I have to think of myself and my future. And I'm really excited about being in the position where I can go back to school. But I really did enjoy my time, and it made me grow as a person, and it taught me so many things, and it gave me so many more deeper connections within West Hollywood and with some avenues that I might not have thought of before. So I really appreciate this opportunity, and I look forward to seeing all of you out and about in the city. And that's it. So any calls for adjournment?
So moved.
Oh, second.
All right, meeting adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great night.